And germs, and I tell you what, Formula One this year has definitely seen a dramatic improvement in terms of the strategies, the racing, and just overall anticipation because of this epic duel that's going down between Red Bull and Mercedes. And we saw yet another example of that this morning in the French Grand Prix. So let's get into it. This is the fuel. What's happening, ladies and germs? This is the Packerman, and welcome to our first edition of the fuel, because I got another one later on tonight. But first up, we're going to be reviewing the 2021 French Grand Prix, which took place at the Circuit Paul Ricard. And it was a dandy of a race, to say the least. And we saw yet another epic duel between Red Bull and Mercedes, as all four cars finished in the top four spots. Where they started and where they finished, it kind of flip-flopped a little bit, mainly in Red Bull's favor, but we're going to get into all of that. This is our 94th edition of the Fuel. Title of this episode is Dutch Redemption, because Max Verstappen managed to score his third victory of the year, so that levels him with Hamilton in victories this year. They are 3-3, with the other one being Sergio Perez at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix a couple weeks ago. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this review. It's going to be a pretty quick review, because there isn't really anything else of note other than, what happened in the race itself. So, this race was 53 laps in length. 2021 French Grand Prix. So, Max Verstappen won the pole, but had a bit of a troubled start, and we'll get to that in a minute. Yuki Tsunoda had to start from the pit lane due to changing a gearbox, so that was costly for him. Verstappen actually ended up blowing the first chicane. He made it through turn one, but then the car got really loose with it, and he had to go on to they have an off-road kind of thing where it's basically all paved, but there's certain sections that have like stripes, like blue and red stripes. That's kind of like the out of bounds area. Verstappen basically got loose and had to duck onto one of those on the outside of the track to regain control of the car, and he actually ended up giving up the lead to Hamilton right off the get-go. And there was some wondering, should he have, if he missed the turn, should he have gone through a little chicane that's on that inside right there, kind of as a penalty. But since he actually made it through turn one and he actually got loose and went off in turn two, the officials determined that no other action needed to be taken. So Hamilton leads lap one. Lando Norris goes off in turn one, and he had to go through the chicane, a little makeshift chicane, which allowed his teammate Ricciardo pass for the 9th position. Bottas starts getting within DRS range of Verstappen for the 2nd position. Bottas actually looked pretty good in this race. It just sucks how it ended up for him. Ricciardo got by Alonso for 8th, and Norris also got by Alonso for 9th, so Alonso got passed by both of the McLarens. Vettel then gets by Alonso for 10th, which moves the Aston Martin into the points. Ricciardo gets by Leclerc for 7th. Both of the McLarens were really good in this race, by the way. Ricciardo got by Leclerc for 7th. Leclerc was the first to come down pit road on lap 15 to change to the hard tires. There were a lot of people that were thinking that maybe a one-stop strategy could have been viable, but then a couple of teams decided to go with a two-stop strategy. Because apparently the tires were graining a little bit more on the track surface than they initially thought. Hamilton has a 3-second gap on Verstappen on lap 16. Bottas pits from 3rd on lap 18, and Verstappen comes in on lap 19 from 2nd. Hamilton then comes in the next lap, but Verstappen manages to do the undercut and gets ahead of Hamilton. And I guess the Mercedes guys were unaware of the fact that the undercut at this particular track was pretty powerful, because Verstappen managed to basically erase a 3-second lead and take the lead himself. But Hamilton and both the Mercedes were right on his heels and in his DRS. So there was that. Perez, who stayed out long, finally pit from the lead on lap 25. So that was a pretty long time on those medium tires. Hamilton still in striking distance of Verstappen for the race lead. Had a great battle for 8th between both of the Ferraris of Leclerc and Sainz, Norris and Gasly, with Lando Norris maneuvering through all of them to get to the 8th position. And then Red Bull decided to go off strategy. They decided to pit Verstappen from the lead on lap 33, going to a 2-stop strategy. So they switched to the mediums. Lando Norris is pretty much coming through the field at this point. He's up to the 6th position. Both of the Aston Martins had not pit at this point, but then they finally come in. Vettel finally pit on lap 38, so he went the longest. I think he started on hards, but according to the rules, you have to make at least one pit stop, so unless it rains. So he had to come in for a set of tires. Verstappen closes on Bottas for 2nd with 10 laps to go. And then going down the back stretch, Bottas moved to the inside to try to kind of protect his position, but actually ended up missing the turn, and that allowed Verstappen to get alongside and past him for the 2nd position, and he is 5 seconds back of Hamilton with 8 laps to go. But for the next couple laps, Hamilton was actually able to maintain that 5-second gap. Then Perez starts challenging Bottas for the final podium spot with 5 laps to go, and gets by him for that final podium spot. And what didn't make sense to me was Mercedes had like a 50-second lead. Bottas had like a 50-second lead on 5th place, Lando Norris. Why didn't they bring him in to get fresh soft tires and take the fastest lap away from Verstappen? That just didn't make any sense to me. I mean, the podium was lost at that point. I mean, so you had nothing to lose. Come in, get fresh softs, and take the fastest lap away from Verstappen. So that didn't make any fucking sense to me whatsoever. Verstappen then starts taking chunks out of Hamilton's lead. Gets into DRS range, coming to 2 laps to go. Apparently there was an incident that involved Perez and Bottas that was under investigation, but the officials decided that nothing further needed to be done. And Verstappen uses DRS on the backstretch to blow by Hamilton for the race lead. It's our one and only pure lead change, and it's a big one because this once again switches the championship fight up. Instead of Hamilton retaking the points lead, Verstappen stretches his point lead by taking the victory in the French Grand Prix, and what was a very clean and pretty entertaining race, to say the least. Seeing all these different strategies, all these different guys coming through the field, and Verstappen having to recover from doing a 2-stop strategy and getting past Hamilton for the win with 1.5 laps remaining is pretty damn fun to watch. This battle between Red Bull and Mercedes is going to go all the way down to the wire in terms of the championship. You know, we have no idea what's going to happen, but we know that Mercedes is going to respond to this in some way, shape, or form. Red Bull might have the edge right now, but I think Mercedes is going to respond sooner rather than later, because they're just not going to let this stay forever. So, in terms of overall lead changes, we only had 3 overall lead changes during the race. 1 pure lead change, but no safety cars. It was clean and green from light to checkered. So, good clean race, and it was actually a pretty entertaining race for the most part, with all the different strategies and stuff like that. So, race results for the French Grand Prix. Max Verstappen with the win. He also set the fastest lap, so that's an extra bonus point. So he earns 26 points. Lewis Hamilton has to settle for 2nd, almost 3 seconds back. Sergio Perez gets the final spot on the podium. Valtteri Bottas finished 4th. He was not very happy. He basically told him that he wanted to go on a 2-stop strategy. Mercedes told him no, and they ended up off the podium as a result. So I think the relationship between Valtteri Bottas and Mercedes is deteriorating rapidly. I don't foresee Bottas back at Mercedes next year. I think he's going to be looking for a new home for 2022. And yeah, both of the McLarens finishing 5th and 6th, so good runs for McLaren, trying to get that 3rd spot in the Constructors' Championship. Pierre Gasly and the AlphaTauri finishes in 7th. Then you have Fernando Alonso and the Alpine coming home in 8th, and then both of the Aston Martins of Sebastian Vettel and Lance Stroll come home in 9th and 10th. So Aston Martin gaining 3 more points towards the Constructors' standings. Driver standings with 7 races down, and there will be a 23rd race. They've agreed in principle that there will be a race sometime in the U.S. to replace the Singapore Grand Prix. We just don't know what it is yet. So we'll just leave that alone for right now. But in the driver standings, Max Verstappen extends his points lead over Lewis Hamilton to 12 points. Sergio Perez is 3rd with 84 points, and you have Lando Norris in the 4th position with 76. Valtteri Bottas in 5th with 59 points, and you have both of the Ferrari drivers, Leclerc and Sainz in 6th and 7th. And then the rest of the top 10, Pierre Gasly, Daniel Ricciardo, and Sebastian Vettel. And then constructor standings, Red Bull with 215 points. They now have a 37-point advantage over Mercedes in the Constructors' Championship. McLaren is solidly in the 3rd position now in the constructor standings with Ferrari in 4th. Of course, long-time rivalry between those two teams. Then you have the AlphaTauri team in the 5th position, and then Aston Martin in 6th. Alpine Renault in 7th. Alfa Romeo in the 8th position with 2 points, and then Williams and Haas still yet to score in 2021. As for my final rating for the 2021 French Grand Prix, it was actually pretty good. Pretty good race. Not a whole hell of a lot of lead changes, but a lot of interesting strategies and a lot of gamesmanship being played, and it's going to be like this for the entirety of the season. And you know, they're going to Red Bull Ring for back-to-back races there in Austria the next 2 weeks. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out as this battle between Red Bull and Mercedes continues to develop over the course of the season. But my final rating for the French Grand Prix, I'm going to give it a solid 7 on the fuel gauge, so a 7 out of 10. Pretty damn good race. And crazy strategies throughout the day. And we ended up with it wasn't a last lap pass for the win, but it was pretty damn close, to say the least. It's not very often that you see a late race pass for the win. Of course, we almost saw it at Bahrain, but Verstappen kind of screwed the pooch on that one by going off track. So, but he got the job done this time around, and there's no track limits to worry about in this case. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Fuel. Not a whole hell of a lot to talk about, but still some pretty interesting things and a pretty solid race as well. So, no complaints here. No complaints here whatsoever. Coming up later on tonight, hopefully, if I don't zonk out later on, will be the next edition of the Fuel, which will be the NASCAR's return to Nashville, the Nashville Super Speedway. The truck and Xfinity races were pretty good, to say the least, so it'll be interesting to see what the Cup race is like. But the green flag isn't flying until 3:45 Eastern, so still a couple more hours before that race begins. So, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, this is the Packerman signing out. See you later.
Thank you for watching tonight's video. Be sure to like and subscribe, you rats!